It's 6 o'clock on Monday, December 12th, and I'm calling this meeting of the school board to order for my last time. And we will do roll call.
Charles Black Lance.
Here.
Kevin Boyle.
Here.
Michelle Brecken.
Here.
Tom Hicks.
Here.
Ruth Nelson.
Here.
John Ward.
Here.
Are all present.
And just a note, the acoustics in here are not as good as in the board table. So at the last meeting, the audience had a hard time hearing us. So am I speaking loud enough? Can you hear? Okay, everyone, if you can have your actresses' voices out there. So, okay. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I didn't ask, were there any amendments to the agenda since we met? Okay. So it's approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second.
First from Boyles, a second from Director Hagelin. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Yeah, agenda is approved. And so a couple of things, this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota statutes 13D.02. It's being recorded and access will be made available on the school district's website. And we have, as people have noticed, 2 new board members up here with us, and we're going to our superintendent's going to do the oath of office, but before they do that, welcome to Director John Ward and Director Michelle Brecken. We're glad to have you up here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're going to go to the same spot. So Michelle and I are coming to Director Ward. You two get to look this way. Okay. All right. It is an honor that you were elected to guide the education of our community's children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a director of our school district with the duties empowered by the Minnesota legislature. This power puts you and the other members of our school board in the position of being morally and legally responsible for equitable, quality education of every student in our district. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing vision, the board, with extensive participation of the community, envisions the community's educational future, and then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for the public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions that affect the education of our children. As board members, you serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together with the superintendent and staff to lead the district towards fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in the area of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. So, I have for both of you, Mr. Ward, this is yours. So, by signing this, I'm going to try my year. You are accepting the oath of office, and it must be, we're going to file it with their school district. So, you're going to read this out loud and then sign. Okay. I'll let John go first, and then you'll go. I'll get a pen.
I hereby accept the office of school board member of Independent School District number 181 for a term beginning the second Monday in December 2022 and expiring the end of December 2024.
All right, you're going to sign and date. Director Brecken, you're next.
Okay, I hereby accept the office of school board of Independent School District number 181 for a term beginning the second Monday in December 2022 and expiring the end of December 2024.
to see family and friends in the audience too, so thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, once again, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, we are going to start right in with our public hearing for truth and taxation, and Marcy Lord, our Director of Finance Business Services, is up to do that presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, John. I can't think of a better gift than the Truth and Taxation presentation. And if you have any questions, please ask as we go through, because you guys are new to this, and it is, school finance is a lot. I'll just say that. So Minnesota state law requirements that we have a public meeting between November 25th and December 28th, which is tonight, and then it has to be later than 6 p.m. So after this, we'll have public comment, and then the approval of the levy after that. So the hearing agenda, you'll get background information on school funding. There'll be a presentation on the district's budget, and then also the tax levy for taxes payable in 2023, and then public comments. So the Minnesota legislature sets funding for Minnesota public schools. As many of you know, it's not something that we can set ourselves. The state sets the formulas which determine our revenue, the tax policy for local districts, and the maximum amount that we can levy. The state also authorizes the school board to submit referendums and then operating and capital, which we did that in April of 2018 with Blueprint 181. We do not currently have an operating referendum. And the Gen Ed formula currently is at $6,863 per student. So since 2002/03, the Gen Ed formula has not kept pace with inflation, and you'll hear this from us every year. There's been no major adjustments. This last year and 2022-23, we saw a 2.5% increase from the state and then a 2%. If we were to follow in inflation, that $6,863 should be $8,126. So there's quite a gap there. And this is just a chart that reflects that. So you can see over the years, we have not kept up with inflation. So with special ed, there's underfunding, and our most recent fiscal year 21, the special ed cross subsidy specifically for Brainerd was $5.1 million, meaning we did not receive funding to cover all of our special ed expenses. And there's a gap throughout the state. So in 2020, the programs were underfunded statewide $591 million. Last year, there was potential talk of cross-subsidy aid or cross-subsidy being put into the legislature, but then that kind of got halted. And so we're hopeful that maybe that would be something that the legislature will talk about this spring. So a change in the tax levy does not determine a change in budget. So for example, we may see an increase in the tax levy, but we have different funds, and if it is in the debt service fund, that doesn't necessarily help our operations. It creates revenue for us to make tax or debt payments, but it does not necessarily mean that we can use that in the general fund. So difference in levy cycles, cities and counties, they actually levy with their fiscal year. So they're levying for 2023 and the taxes payable are in 2023. School districts, this levy that you guys will approve will not be, it will be for 2023-24 school year, which is different. Budget information, the 23-24 budget is approved June of '23, so the budget information that we're required to present is actually this year's 22-23. So it doesn't necessarily coincide, but that's just how it works for school districts. And we have, as I said, district funds. We have a general fund, food service fund, community service fund, building construction fund, debt service, internal service, and then OPEB trust and OPEB debt service. Those are all separate. Just think of them as separate checking accounts, basically. So this is a summary that we have to submit, actually publish in the general newspaper, and then also this year we were required to send this to the county to be included with the tax statements. And it's a summary of how we ended last year and then this year's current budget. And then the audit for last year will be presented at next month's board meeting. And this is a graph of all of our funds' revenues. You can see that the general fund makes up the majority of it. The levy is 21.1% of all our revenues budgeted, and the 2.55% increase that's being presented tonight represents only 0.5% of all of our revenues budgeted. So it's a very small piece of all the funds we have. The general fund revenue is 88 million, and 9.5 million of the levy in the local category is going to go down to 9.3 with this proposed levy. It's enrollment driven. So in the general fund, it's all based on enrollment. The general fund expenditures by object. So this is our expenses. What are we purchasing? Employee benefits, purchase services. These are all categories that are put out there by the state. And we spend almost 78% on salary and benefits. We're in the people business, as some have said. And then the next highest is purchase services. So our contracted transportation, mental health, repairs and maintenance, that's the next bucket. And this is general fund expenditures by program. So this is all of our expenses, but then telling us what are we spending them on, what categories. Our highest percentage is obviously instructional and support services at 80. When you combine all of them together, it's 80.3%. And then there's other categories, sites and buildings, administration, and then other as well on that. So with the property tax levy, there's the determination of the levy. We compare the prior year with the current year, talk about the reasons for the change in the levy, and then the impact on the taxpayers. Property tax background, so there's various taxing districts. Some may have a township, some may have a city, but generally there's always a school and a county on their tax statements. And then the county sends the bills and the districts receives the funds from the county. So this is an example of a statement that would a taxpayer would have received, and it has the jurisdictions broken out. And then it is supposed to list the time and place of the public meetings, and then also this year, as I said, the new requirement was that budget that was supposed to be sent in included as well. And as previously stated, this is all state law, voter approval. When you look at the 6 steps on the next slide, the school district really only has a say in one of those steps. So the city county assessor determines the market value. The legislature sets the formula and the tax capacity for the school districts. The county auditor calculates the tax capacity, and then MDE calculates what our maximum levy is. And then the school board approves the proposed levy in September, and then in December, the final levy. So that's the one piece to the puzzle that the school board plays. And then the county auditor divides the final levy and collects all the taxes and remits them to the school district. And then this is the district's process. So September 8th, the MDE prepared the draft. September 12th, the school board approved it. Mid-November, the county mailed out the tax statements. December 12th, tonight, we are talking about this and having the public hearing. And then following the hearing, the school board will certify the final levy amounts. So tonight, the increase is a value of $628,464 or 2.5%. And then changes in the categories are included in the following slides. So you'll see the general fund is going down 1.9% as I had mentioned, and then the debt service fund is going up 5.5%. And the debt service, the change is due to Blueprint 181 issuing debt issuances. So factors impacting individual taxpayers' school taxes. Changes in the value of the individual's property or the total value overall in the district can affect your taxes. Changes in the state funding formulas can as well, but we didn't see any dramatic changes from previous years, so that's not generally the case this year, but that can be in other years. And this is just kind of a scenario. So if you have a higher market value, you're going to get a bigger slice of the district's pie or levy as you on this example. And if you have lower market value, you're going to get a smaller slice of the pie. So I wanted to do a scenario because we did have questions this year on, taxes going up. So in this example, there's 2 properties in the district. Both are valued at $100,000. The total levy is $500. Each property would pay $250. In this example, if we did the 2.5%, their taxes would go up 2.5%. But in the next scenario, 2 properties in the district, same 2 properties, the orange house value increases by 10%. The blue house value increases by 25%. The total levy of $500 does not go up. We do not get more funds because somebody's market value goes up. The school district will still generate the same amount of the levy, but the orange house pays less and the blue house pays more. I think that's kind of a common misconception that my taxes are going up. The school now has a lot of money that, I wish that was the case sometimes, but that is not an accurate depiction. So the upcoming slides are examples with no change in property value, and then also with a change of 44.7% cumulative change over the last 4 years. And the amounts in here are the amounts that were used with the original Blueprint 181 when we talked about the $7 per month. So on this slide, this first one is based on no changes in property value, taxes would be going down. So, and that's because properties are added, right? Like we have a set group of properties and then a business comes in and builds and that adds to our property value. And so you and I may see a property tax decrease, but our market values are also going up, so that may not be the case. Sorry, I think I clicked back too many. So the graphs in this is there's no change in the property value. The residential home of $156,200 would have saw a decrease. We know that hasn't happened in the last 4 years, but it's just to show that had there been no change in market value, taxes would actually be going down. And then the second example is a commercial property with a value of $219,900. And then example 3 is agricultural at $4,000 and then seasonal rec property at $202,000. And then these next are estimated changes in school property taxes with the 44.7 cumulative changes in property value for the last 4 years. So that home that is valued at $156,200 actually would have started at a value of $107,000. So it's gone up substantially just with all that's happened with the assessments done by the county. And then you can see the values change for the commercial property as well. So next steps is the board accepts public comments on the proposed levy, and then we'll certify the 2023 property tax levy. Are there any questions?
That was a very good presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have some public comments up here that are for a later public comment period. This is only for the public hearing for taxation. So is there anyone that wanted to make any comments for this part of the meeting? Okay, none, okay. So now we need to approve the final tax levy for 2022 payable in 2023 as presented, and this is a resolution.
I'll move to approve the resolution of the final tax levy as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Blacklands. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Kevin Boils,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
Tom Haglund,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
John Ward,
Yes.
Charles Blacklands,
Yes.
all in favor.
Wonderful. So that ends our public hearing for truth and taxation, and we'll start the regular portion of our meeting with recognitions.
So I get to start us, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, there's a birthday in the house. I'm hoping you guys are ready to sing happy birthday. I didn't get to come here and be quiet. You have to sing with us. So Director Hagelin, rumor has it it's your birthday today?
Just happens to be.
You're 29 today.
Holding.
And holding, fantastic. So if you join me, Risa, let's sing happy birthday to Director Hagelin. Ready? Down in the choir room and not a choir room. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Director Hagelin. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
So it's a very
another day.
For the birthday. Yeah, we got gifts too.
Your favorite thing. being
But
at a
next, what
board
we really
meeting
want
on
to do, it's a changing time for us. So we welcome 2 of our new board members this evening. But tonight we get to say goodbye to 3 of our longstanding board members. And so we have a couple things we want to honor you with. But collectively, they have 34 years of serving our district as school board members, and you've done a phenomenal job. And I tried to reflect, I've been here 27 for those years, so I've been here a little bit longer, but all the things that you've done to help shape and change our district. And we lived through lots of celebrations and some sadness and challenges and buildings and more building projects, a pandemic, blue ribbons, and it's all been because of your commitment and your leadership and your passion to make sure great things are happening for our kids. So we cannot thank you enough. It's pretty emotional, isn't it? I feel in my role too, in my service, it's been nice to have that relationship and work strongly with you to make great things happen. So it is an honor in Brainerd Public Schools that when you retire or move on from a position, Brainerd awards some of our retaires, I like to recognize this, a blue blanket. So.
I was
Nelson.
really hoping I'd get one of these tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great things about this gift, because I thought, my gosh, after 34 years of combined experience, there should be something big, right? And as I meet with teachers and they retire after 30, 40 years in education, But the best part about this blanket is every time you see it, or you bring it to one of the activities, it should remind you of everything that's happened in Brainerd Public Schools and your service and how you've wrapped your arms around us to make sure that great things are happening and that we're wrapping our arms around you to thank you for that service. On top of that, we also have sweet treats for you. And I'm hoping those in the audience, you should stop them on your way out because you will not believe these cookies. If you're friends with one of them, they might share. These are quite the artistic. I know. No, I did not make them.
Oh, wow.
But there's a schoolhouse.
Oh,
This is another just token of our appreciation. And as we do this, we'd also like to give you an opportunity to say a few words for your service too, but if you'd like to take one.
thank you. I don't know if I can share these. They're kind of special. I see there's some other ones up there for you guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I actually didn't prepare anything, and I am more emotional than I would thought. It's been a great 17-year run. I've loved every director I've worked with. We've gotten to know each other so well and had a lot of good times, a lot of hard times. I've loved the staff. You guys have been great to work with. Teachers, they know their heart is in taking care of each kid. And I guess what I'm most proud of is for our kiddos and what we have changed in the 17 years I've been here is, I've always been very much for personalized instruction, and we've come a long way when it comes to that. We're trying to meet each kid where they're at and bring them up to the best they can be in their life. And I just, it's not just the laptops or anything like that. It's the teachers actually learning through staff development and other things, and through the support we've been able to give them to personalize their instruction. And it's reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's also each student, as we all know, has such unique needs, and some of them are social, emotional, and some of them are academic, but it's just been so great to see all of the kiddos and to be involved in the school district. That is one, we came to this district or this community mainly because of the school district. My husband had a job offer, but yeah, it's been great. And I know the new board members are going to love it and do a great job too. And I'm excited to see what happens in the future. So thank you.
Well, I guess I would echo a lot what Ruth said as well. It's been a fantastic 13 years. I planned this to have my last board meeting on my birthday 13 years ago. So it's really been enjoyable. I think one of the things that has made it pleasant is we've had an amazing board and an amazing admin team that we've been able to work with. And so very, very functional. That's made it very enjoyable to work with. A couple of things that I've probably really latched onto. I was one of those that wanted to participate in our union negotiations because I just loved working with the staff and really trying to break down some barriers and walls that we're all one. And so I kind of refused. I was kind of the outlier. I refused to sit on a certain side of the table and talk about we and them, and we've really got to come together. So it was a piece that I really, really enjoyed. I wish I'd made further progress with that. Of course, the building pieces that our community stepped forward with and said, yes, we want to invest in the future. So it's kind of a nice legacy to see that I think we're pretty well set with our buildings and grounds. Financially, the district is in a good position, and I'm proud of that as well. So it's just been really, really enjoyable, and good luck to our oncoming board members and the other couple that aren't here this evening. You're in good hands with a great admin team and staff, and I've really, really enjoyed this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to to serve Brainerd School District for the last 4 years, and that's definitely been an enjoyable time. And thank you for the board for standing alongside me, shoulder to shoulder, over the last 4 years as well. And for those of you that are just standing with me for one day. But anyhow, I sure have enjoyed the opportunity to serve again as part of the school board for ISD 181. One thing I wanted to point out is that my children are up here, along with my wife, Catherine, and my son, Chayton, and my daughter, Bethany, and my eldest is over at basketball practice. And then Chayton will be leaving here soon for basketball practice as well. So that I wanted to point out is important to me, and it relates to my role as a board member here, is that's really one of my whys as to why I've served over the last 4 years, is not just for all students, but also, honestly, is for my own students, my children as well. And not only to see them through their educational experience here at CLC and to make, or here at ISD 181, and to make sure that I can do what I can to make sure it's the best experience possible for them, but to really bolt myself onto a school district that already was quite well run due to people like Tom and Ruth and those that came before me. So, and it's also important for my children to be a part of this experience, to see their dad win, as I did 4 years ago. So they were here on the day that I took my initial oath as well. And I also feel it's really important that they're here as I walk through my final day on the school board as well. One of the things that my father shared with me years ago was that leadership isn't something that is something that you necessarily suit out or search out for, or something that you try to necessarily attain, but something that is a responsibility, and even for some, a bit of a burden as well. And I definitely felt called to be a part of this school board so many years ago. And I wanted to make sure that my children were a part of this process, to be able to see what that's like, to see the successes of it 4 years ago, the losses even years before that I tried to get on the board, and now another loss that I experienced this fall. And it's very important for them to see up close and personal, again, those successes, but also the losses, but the importance of character through it all. So I'm so thankful for my kids to be here, to be a part of that. I also wanted to share quickly that they see their father play an active role in the community. And that's another reason why I wanted to be part of the ISD 181 school board, was not necessarily for political gain or to move a political movement, but more importantly, to be an important cog within the structure of our community. And that's what I felt I was able to do, and I'm so thankful for the voters to have been giving me that opportunity for 4 years. But finally, it's so important to see, for my children to see their dad be a part of this process. And it's not just about my children, but it's also about everyone else's children that are part of the school district. A big part of my why, to be able to be here and to serve all students, and to serve the administration and the faculty and the staff that also serve those students. It's such an important task. And the last thing that I really wanted to share were two things that I'm so very proud to be a part of, such a, in my opinion, a well-oiled machine, and such a wonderful organization, which is our school district, serving some amazing students. As a parent, I get to go around the state to different schools, to different organizations, and I'm so proud to be a part of our school district. As a school board member, that's been nice, but more importantly, as a dad, to be able to plug into something that's so special. And it's really important, I believe, that the community hears that we have so many wonderful things in our community, and I want to make sure that that's one of the last things that I say as a part of this board, that you all are a part of something special. Now, you're closing the door on having an extremely handsome American Indian as a part of your school board, but I encourage you all that you all must move on, and leadership will continue to rise up in its own special way around us. The final thing as it relates to our mascot, which is a warrior. And the important thing that I grew up with is my dad is a full-blood Lakota. My mom's Ojibwe, so I am Lakota and Ojibwe. So I grew up with the vernacular of what it meant to be a warrior. And it wasn't just a slogan, but it was very much a part of your life, the way of life. And if you look back from what my father used to tell me, my children's grandfather, as a warrior, as an individual, it's not necessarily about the battle, but it's about the sacrifice the individual makes for the people in the community, for the people in the tribe, the people in the band, or the people even within the school district. It's those sacrifices that warrior makes that carves out the importance of that warrior. It's not the kudos, it's not any particular gain, but it's that service. And I'm so pleased to have been a warrior with ISD 181. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Ruth, I'm going to take the next one because it's about you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I thought it would be weird if you read your own recognition. So we'd like to congratulate Ruth Nelson for being recognized by MSBA for completing more than 300 hours of attendance at MSBA-sponsored meetings and activities. For all of her work, Ruth is being awarded the President's Award for 22-23. Then I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll do the first one, and then maybe us three retiring board members will do the last three. And I want to congratulate Izzy Olson, and I know her mom because her mom was a teacher for one of my boys, so this is extra special that I get to say this, for finishing third, and third is pretty impressive in the state, in Section 8 AA diving. So congratulations to Izzy Olson.
And congratulations to Damian Bentho, Dylan Gross, Eli Holz, Mitch Wynn, Marcelo Getty, and John Hagan for all being named to the Brainerd Dispatch All-Area First Team in football.
Good luck to all the winter sport participants as they begin their season. Adaptive floor hockey, boys basketball, girls basketball, competitive cheer, dance, boys hockey, girls hockey, boys Nordic skiing, girls Nordic skiing, boys swimming and diving, and wrestling. Best of luck.
What an impressive array of sports we have for our kids.
It's busy.
Okay, next up, I have several people that want to speak tonight, and I'll call your name, but I just wanted to let you know that a lot of these are about the strategic plan, and we do have 2 presentations coming up, but we have no action item for the strategic plans. So tonight, we're just going to hear 2 presentations and not take any action. So I don't know if that changes anyone's desire, but I will, we have Rachel Kahn, sorry.
Everybody sit here.
Sure, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Rachel Kahn, and I'm a Brainerd resident, so thank you. Basically, I was going to speak quickly about the fact that, well, first of all, I had requested a copy of the strategic plan, the current one that you're following, and Angie Bennett, I don't know if she's here, but she was so kindly sent me the strategic plan from 2013, and then a 2014 document from Superintendent Willard, and his findings and statements of opportunities, and then something about all of the building facility changes. So I appreciate that, if she's here. And then basically, I did want to just mention that we were hoping that the newly elected board members were going to be able to vote on, what consultant to use for the strategic plan that I guess is being presented. The 2 consultants are doing their presentations today, so great. But then as a community member, and maybe more people that are listening to this or here, we would like to know what the criteria is to get on the strategic plan committee. How do we do that? What are, what the criteria is for each person, how the staff is determined, maybe administrators, and how we can all be part of that. So we just are, I'm hoping that more information will be available on how people are chosen and how we would sign up. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Tony Bauer.
Good evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I've been reading about discussions to hire this strategic consultant, the plan for a new strategic consultant plan. This raises some questions for me. I've also had a chance to read the plan that the district currently has, Strategic Plan 2013. That plan does not sound like a bad plan or an obsolete plan to me. In fact, I was struck by a lot of common sense within it. So on the surface, at least, it appears that the superintendent is rushing this board to replace the Plan 2013 goals, which call for teacher evaluations, keeping the community informed, setting measurable goals for students. Curiously, Plan 2013 does not contain a single word about diversity, race, equity, or sexual identity. I said earlier that this raised some questions for me. Why do we even need a new plan? Is common sense what has become objectionable? Are definable standards what have become objectionable? Is accountability what has become objectionable? Are the unmentioned elements of diversity, race, equity, and sexual identity why we're being led to buy into this urgent demand for a new strategic plan? I would certainly hope not. I guess my last questions are why this board has not challenged Superintendent Hahn to provide her strategic vision. Are her views so out of line with what voters have recently demonstrated that they do not want and will not support? Why are you even thinking of spending our tax dollars pursuing what will simply suck Brainerd down to the lowest common denominator of ideologically driven madness? You want a new plan? Plan to educate our children. Please drop the politics at the doorway. Plan to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Robert Cole-Benzer. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
It's been butchered more than that. Well, I originally wanted to address the fact of the strategic plan. You kind of took the wind out of the sails when you said no action was going to be taken, which is a good thing because I think something like this obviously involves the new members of the board as well because it's a futuristic thing. I think that's cool. So that's really taken a lot of my thunder out of any of this. I appreciate that. I thank for that decision. The other thing that I want to do is I want to thank the people and the directors who are leaving and are retiring or whatever the reason is. We don't always agree. We don't always do that. Sometimes we don't agree in harsher terms. But the point is that you all stepped up to the plate and took on a job and you took on the challenges. And you deserve credit for that. And thank you for that. So with that said, thank you.
Mark Olson.
Mark Olson, 12336 Thompson Road. I agree with what Bob said, and I'm glad you guys got together and thought about it, because initially it was going to be following the comments made that it was going to be, votes were going to be taken tonight. So I think you guys did a good job of saying, no, we have to include the other three candidates that got elected. So you did a good job there. Thank you.
And Doug Kern.
Kind of bouncing off the same thing. I appreciate it so much because it looked like it was going to be a rubber stamp getting 2 more in. It looked like it was just going to be a rubber stamp and there was going to be no discussion other than just vote on it. And so I appreciate that you guys did what you did, you know, the conversation that you had to postpone it just so you can have a conversation. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, and that's all I have for public comment. Okay, wonderful, thank you. And we'll move on to the approval of our minutes from the canvassing and regular school board meeting.
Move to approve?
Is that Director Hagelin?
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the consent calendar.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we had a hard time hearing. So is it Director Blacklands?
Yep.
Okay. And then Director Ward. Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
I did have one question I'm trying to get at it on. I just noticed there was a couple of new positions under non-certified. And I'm assuming that we have those dollars pegged in our budget coming up, and I'm thinking about are these new positions? I don't want to get into the details, but I assume that there's the detailed need of these new positions, in particular as we advance to looking at budgets and making sure that we're balanced. And so I just, rather than replacements of retirees or something, that I notice these new kind of specialized positions, and I don't know if there's any.
I can speak to that.
Sure.
If you'd like. Are you referring to the part-time school nurse and the Indigenous?
Correct,
Okay, so the part-time school nurse is an additional, and we're just doing it through the end of the year and trying to see if we can balance the needs. Mostly it's due to the health needs at Forest View, the student health needs, and only having one full-time nurse. There was a need for additional support there. So right now we do have it in the budget to support that position. And then the district liaison for the Indigenous education program is due to a combination of a reduction of our current Indigenous student liaison is dropping her hours. And then our Indigenous education coordinator is actually going to reduce to part-time. So it's really putting the focus on working directly with the students. And that is all within the grant budget. So there's no impact whatsoever.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next up, we'll have a presentation from the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. And Dr. Candace Burkhardt is going to be presenting.
What?
Janet, I forgot to ask you ahead of time. Is that, oh, I see it. There it is.
And Ashley English. So.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. I'm presenting today with our Indigenous Education Coordinator, Ashley Ingebrigtsen. And let's see, I see it on my side of the computer, but not up on the big screen. I wonder what I'm doing wrong with technology here.
It's kind of a break right now.
I'm just trying to give you all a moment to stare at your cookies a little bit more and think about those.
I was just asking if it's too early to have one.
Oh, there we go.
They said it's your birthday, so
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for your help. All right, now the challenge is I can click it up there. All right, I can learn on the fly. Awesome, so we wanted to give you all just a brief update on our American Indian Education Program, which we've been calling our Indigenous Education Program, just to give you an update and also some education for our 2 new directors on the board about what that program looks like, and then in February, our presentation that our Parent Advisory Committee will be giving to the board. So just a little bit of background and where we're at. So I'll kick it over to my colleague, Ms. Ingebrigtsen, to start us off.
Hi. So Indigenous education, I have just kind of like a brief nutshell summary there, but it's essentially built to really support the unique academic and cultural needs of our Indigenous students in the district. And we have 2 different types of funding that we use for our programming here. So we have MDE's American Indian Education Aid, and then Title VI Indian Education Formula Grant. So those are the 2 sources we have. We use that funding right now for staffing. We kind of discussed that a little bit earlier. We do some college tours, cultural events, field trips, professional development. It kind of looks a little bit different each year, depending on how those grants are written, and that we do with our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, so close collaboration with them as we kind of analyze the impact of the programming from the year before, and then kind of what the plan is for the year that we're moving into. So, and then so a little bit about our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, also goes by APAC, the acronym. So it's a committee that's mostly composed of parents and caregivers of Indigenous students. We do have some community members, some staff, grandparents that serve on that committee as well. And essentially their role is to partner with the school district to provide that guidance on how to provide that culturally relevant school experience for our Indigenous students and how to use that funding to best support them. And then just kind of some statute language there. So the school district, any school district in which there are 10 or more Indigenous students are required to establish an APAC. And then kind of leading into what Candace mentioned, which is that presentation in February. So there's a process then each year where the APAC completes a resolution of concurrence or non-concurrence, or it's also known as annual compliance. And that's where they determine if the school district is meeting the needs of Indigenous students. So a little bit about that, the resolution of concurrence or non-concurrence. So school districts have that statutory requirement to submit annual compliance documents each year. And this is really just giving our APAC an opportunity to meet for discussion, analyze data. Sometimes it's student-parent surveys. It could be just going over some of those statutes. And that's when they determine if the district is concurrent or non-concurrent. If they find that the district and or school board have been meeting the needs of Indigenous students, they issue a vote of concurrence. And then the opposite, if they find that student needs have not been met, they issue a vote of non-concurrence. And then with that vote of non-concurrence, then they must provide, the APAC must provide written recommendations for improvement, in which the school board then has 60 days to respond. So that's that February presentation is this resolution process. So, and then just one thing, I think it's in your board packets, is this MDE self-assessment rubric. So this is a tool that MDE has provided us with, all districts with, which is just kind of a guide, breaking down all the different areas of education and what that looks like in Indigenous education, and really goes through the process from like no implementation, planning stages, the partial implementation to full implementation. So this is one of the tools that our parent committee has chosen to really use going through this process. And we've had now 4 years of non-concurrence votes.
So this, as Ashley mentioned, our past year, we were non-concurrent, and in that, we agreed to take some recommended actions as a school district in our response back to that APAC and in our own report. And we've made some really good progress on those recommendations, and then we also have some areas of growth too that I'll just briefly touch on. So some of the areas of progress that we've really seen this year is a better disaggregation of our data and then sharing that back with our APAC families. So thanks to Dr. Potoff and Ms. Anderson and other people that have been volunteers or supporters in our community and within our district and their expertise, we've really gotten better at looking at data by different groups and really getting better at that continuous improvement process with that. We also conducted a survey for our students and families for all of our Indigenous students in April 2022, and that's helped us improve our programming and really make sure that we're meeting the needs of those that are expressed in the survey. And our Human Resources Director, Angie Bennett, has done a wonderful job really taking the lead on developing a recruitment and retention plan that really will support the diverse recruitment of staff to better match our student population. And then we have also worked with our administrators on that self-assessment rubric. So we recently looked at that in teams at our December 7th administrator meeting and studied and thought about what are some areas of strength that we have and what are some areas and ideas on how we can improve on that rubric. And then Director Hagelin, you really queued us up on the hiring of our full-time student liaison. So we are excited to be able to do that with our use of our federal and state grant funds for this, to really have someone that can be that full-time person working with our students. So we're excited to have that individual join us in January. She has that really great Indigenous cultural lens, and I think will just continue to be an asset for our program. And then we've also had some really good pockets of professional learning. So we hosted the blanket exercise at Brainerd High School in October. We have done some restorative practice work with some Indigenous facilitators around that. We, at our last professional learning day, our elementary teachers and special education staff used some of the Minnesota Humanities Center work to really look at how I evaluate texts for that Indigenous cultural lens. And we've also done some work with our social studies team. So we have some really nice pockets of great professional learning happening. But as I will show in our kind of continued work, that's just really something we want to think about how we can keep standardizing. And it's really hard. There's a lot of priorities in education. There's a lot of mandates on what your professional learning time is used for. So we're really just trying to think about how do we create that plan, that systemic rollout of making sure all of our staff are culturally aware for our Indigenous students. And then also just continuing to remove those opportunity gaps for our students and that over-identification in special education. We are doing better than the state average for our Indigenous students, but that is not cutting it. That is still not on par for our other students in the district. And so we really have a ways to go in making sure that we have all of our students college and career ready and able to choose whatever pathway that they would like to do. And then just continuing to enhance our process for ensuring that our curriculum is culturally relevant and appropriate. We have some nice things embedded into our process when we do new curriculum adoption through our district assessment, or I'm sorry, our district advisory committee, but really just kind of starting to tease out, what do we do if we see a text that we no longer want to use? What is that process like? And how do we make sure that we're collecting all stakeholder input in that? So more work to come, but I'm really excited. I think we have some good things that are happening in the district and for our Indigenous students and families. And then our future partnerships with you as the school board, we have just been really blessed to have Director Blacklance and Director Nelson serving and supporting our APAC. So we would love to continue partnering with the board to have a director attend meetings and participate and be able to report back what they hear in those meetings. And then to continue to look at that review of the self-assessment rubric, especially in preparation for that February presentation by our families. And then continuing to look at areas where we can really redefine school board policy or make sure that it's culturally relevant for our families. One of the things I know we've talked about over the last year is developing a smudging policy or looking at some of those pieces. And so I think with the addition of our new Indigenous student liaison, we're in a really good place to start to move some of that work forward. So with that, we're open to any questions that you have, but we just really thank you for your support of our program and excited to continue to work with you.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but a comment. It's something that we've talked about the last couple of years. Every year when we get a non-conformance vote, it's kind of like a sting. And so we had talked a couple of years ago anyway, maybe it's something, at least in the future, that if we could at least do some small incremental goals each quarter so that we make headway. Maybe it's just something to consider instead of once a year, at least quarterly, where we can make progress so that we can get the conformance vote instead of once a year. I think from the board, because we need to advance, and unfortunately it's kind of, at least I'm speaking for myself, kind of out of sight, out of mind, unless it's how are we doing, where are we at with things. It's an idea or a thought to make greater progress.
Well, and I know there's those different pockets you can move ahead on, and I think in February it'll be important to see that we have moved ahead, because we have moved ahead, and we're not there yet, and we may never be there. So that's what's hard with the non-compliance, is that it's like anything else in a school district. You're always working to improve, and you're never totally there. There's always more you can do. So anyway, I just think it's important for us to know, like you said in here, what we've done, and to have that incorporated in that presentation in February too. Director Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell us, you might have said this already, are you in the process of the hiring of the liaison person?
Yeah, you just approved them right before we got up here. So they were on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
So we have officially hired for that position now, and she will start January 3rd.
So you have all the finalists and everything or whatever. We do, yeah. So another question I had is, do you have student and staff participation on the group as well?
Yeah, we have had some students come, so we have at the high school like an Indigenous Peoples Club, so sometimes we'll have representation from that club join the parent committee and collaborate on some of the use of funds, or if they have a project or something that they like to take on, partnering with the committee that way.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just explain a little bit more about what that new person will do, what their role will be?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really thrilled to have this position. So Ms. Inglebrigtsen is moving from full-time to part-time, and so we have that hole in our programming that we're really excited to fill. So we really see this position, right now our current student liaison is averaging about 5 hours a week, so it's really limited. We're only able to really work with a few high school students. So we see this person really coming in, working with our high school, working with our alternative learning center, spending more time here at Forest View Middle School. And then we have, all of our elementary schools have pockets of our American Indian students. So having that person really start to develop some culture and community with those elementary schoolers. So really going out into the buildings and working directly with students, focusing on what student goals, projects that they have, interest. We have a new sewing machine that our program purchased that we're excited to start creating some ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts and all sorts of fun things. Would you add anything else to that?
Yeah, I think just some of that relationship building, some of that shared identity and cultural background, I think feels for students having an Indigenous person that they connect with, often. I think that has an impact in a way that I, as a non-Indigenous person, can't have. So I'm excited to have her there, and like Candace said, just kind of we're hoping. K through 12. She will work with our Indigenous Peoples Club group at the high school. And then, just student support, attending IEP meetings, any just as needs come up, kind of building those relationships, not only with students too, but also with families as well. And then there's a lot of like fun cultural projects and stuff that they're, I know, really excited to take on. So that'll be fun to see what they're able to create here as she gets started.
And just to be that resource for staff as well when they have cultural questions that come up. For example, we had a student that passed away last year, and so who was Indigenous. So thinking about what are some of those kind of funeral traditions that we need to know about that I myself don't have that background knowledge of, so this person can really support our district with that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for all your work. It's good stuff. Okay, next up, we're going to go into the strategic planning options, and I think I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Hahn to introduce the people that are doing the presentation.
Absolutely. So I'm looking at Ryan, because our first presenter that's going to speak is from the Minnesota School Boards Association. Her name is Gail Gilman, and she'll be joining us virtually. So I'm waiting for Ryan to set that up, and then she can start presenting. All set? All right, Gail, can you hear me?
Are we ready? Yes, I can. How are you this evening?
Good, I'm going to pull up. I have your presentation I need to pull up, correct?
Yes, please do that. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to begin by saying greetings to everyone. Chair Nelson, Superintendent Hahn, board members, and a special shout out to the two that were installed this evening who took the oath, Director Brecken and Director Ward, and a huge thank you to the three board members who will be transitioning, Chair Nelson and Director Hagelin and Director Black Lance. As a former school board member myself, it's a little bit emotional watching the transition here. So I appreciate the work that you have done for those of you who are leaving, and I wish the very best to those that are joining the board, and a welcome to you as well. So with that, thank you, Superintendent Hahn, for popping that PowerPoint up. A little bit about me. I am a former school board member. I'll start out by saying that. My background, my educational background is in family and youth education. I currently serve as Director of Strategic Planning and Board Leadership with your Minnesota School Boards Association. And I certainly want to offer a word of thanks for your association membership. It is our pleasure to work with you and to serve you as well. The majority of my career was spent on faculty at the University of Minnesota, and then I spent a number of years working with the Minnesota Board on Aging. I joined the Minnesota School Boards Association in 2017, and my interest in serving with MSBA was because I was a former school board member. I served on the New Ulm Board of Education 2 terms, and during those years I served as vice chair and also clerk, and also had the honor to serve on the Riverbend Education District. So it was a great experience to be able to segue my educational background and also my skills from serving on a school board to my work at Minnesota School Boards Association. So as we start diving into the quick overview that I'll share with you about our services and our process, on the next slide, the role of the board is to govern. And part of that governance is to have a strategic plan in place so that you can set direction for the school district. At MSBA, we look at your strategic plan as a visionary roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years. And once your strategic plan is in place, you really do have goal alignment. The goals of your new strategic plan will align with the goals of your superintendent, the goals of you as a board, the goals for your staff, and the goals for your students. The next slide shows the board governance model. So for those of you who have been on the board for a number of years, you are governing under this model, knowing that one of the key things at the top of the circle is strategic plan, to have that in place. And then once that is in place, you pass the management of that strategic plan over to your superintendent. So why strategic planning? On the next slide, the next couple of slides, I have a few bullet points for you. First of all, the strategic plan meets a Minnesota statute requirement. So you have that legal requirement in place. It definitely builds board and superintendent team relationships. This is an activity that will not happen in a silo. It will be interactive with you and the superintendent, along with a lot of other stakeholders that I'll talk about in a minute. It will certainly provide clear expectations for your operations. It'll drive you in the pursuit of excellence. It'll take that 2013 strategic plan that you have in place and move that to the next 3 to 5 years, not losing sight of what you already have in place, but transitioning and seeing what else should we be focusing on. Certainly your strategic plan will provide clarity for your staff, both licensed and non-licensed. It'll set you up to do some monitoring of performance and evaluation, certainly through student achievement and many other areas as well. Through our process, it'll ensure that you speak for your school community, because all voices and values will be brought to the table. It'll certainly align you with community values and your district operations, so you are in sync with what you know you need and what the community expectations are as well. This will be a placeholder for your world's best workforce. When I was on the school board, we had many different documents, but we will try and incorporate everything into one document as a placeholder. So your world's best workforce will be a placeholder, will be embedded into this strategic plan, along with any other initiatives that are continuing. So again, listening to, knowing that you have that 2013 plan, there are some things that aren't going to fall off the table. We're going to embed them into that next strategic plan as well. And then lastly, for the whys, is it will establish a strategic governance framework, which simply means that you'll have the goals aligned. The district goals then will tie to superintendent goals, board goals, staff goals, student goals, and community goals. MSBA started doing strategic planning in 2015, and as of today, I believe we've completed 104, or almost. I have 3 I'm working on right now, so in about 2 weeks, we'll be at that 104 number. As far as our planning process, for us, our process means being very comprehensive, it means very inclusive, and it means being very transparent. And I mentioned before that all the voices and values will be welcomed, and we'll give them an opportunity to be heard. So to help us with that, we start with data collection at the beginning of the process. And as we collect information, we do that in a couple ways. First of all, through surveys. So we will have an internal and an external survey that will be for all stakeholder groups, internal for the board, administration, and staff, and the external will be for your parents, guardians, alumni, community members, anyone else who is part of your school community will be invited to take that survey. We'll also do a series of listening sessions, and the listening sessions will be representative of all stakeholder groups. So in the process, I always like to hear from middle school and high school students. I like to hear from staff, both licensed and non-licensed. A listening session with your superintendent and with all the administrators. A listening session with you as board members, and then a listening session with community, whoever your external stakeholders are. We'll also do focus groups. If there are some groups that you'd really like to gather their additional information, we will do listening sessions with them as well. Example might be the early childhood parents. Another example is if the demographic of your school community is age 60 plus, it'd be important to hear from them. Elected officials. So any focus group that you deem appropriate, we'll do a listening session with them as well. The surveys and the listening sessions then will be, the information will be compiled in a stakeholder engagement report,
And then also there will be a State of the School District update. So that's all the work that happens at the front end of the process to gather information, which then moves us into the next slide, and that's the development of your strategic plan. So one of the things that you as a board will want to identify is a strategic planning committee. And I always recommend that each stakeholder group is represented. So representatives of the students, the staff, both licensed and non-licensed, your superintendent, all board members, other administrators, and then community members. And as board members, I like to lean on you for recommendations, especially for the community members, so that you make sure you have a good cross-section included in the process. Through the process, we'll look at what we consider the foundational elements of the strategic plan, and that's values, belief statements, mission statement, vision statement. If you've got those in place right now, you can keep them as is. You can just simply review them. You can revise them, or you can create them all over again, especially if you don't have them. We'll also identify focus areas or themes. Usually we look at 3 to 5 focus areas along with their goals and objectives. And then as we start moving through the process, we're going to talk about the kind of the wrap up, the adoption, and the implementation. And so for each of those focus areas, there'll be action plans that will be developed. One of the things that I always like to do when we get to adoption or before adoption is to meet with board members and superintendent during an open meeting. And it will be an opportunity to review the plan, to put kind of that final seal of approval on the plan before you adopt it. And then also we'll do what we call the board self-evaluation. And that reflects the 5 standards of board leadership. And we'll tie everything together for you so that as the process comes to an end, at that point, you are ready and committed with that next strategic plan. And then, of course, and our end product, I should mention too, is kind of our signature piece. We call it a plan on a page. So what you will get is the information summarized with your values, beliefs, mission statement, vision statement, and your 5 focus areas. That's really the plan on a page portion. And then the other pages that will go with it, which usually there's 2 to 3 additional pages, that will have your focus areas and goals and objectives. And then as the process is moving ahead, there's that monitoring and the updating of the strategic plan. And so before we finish our work together, we'll talk about how you are going to set up that monitoring plan. I always include a visit 1 year later, or I say any other work that you question or work that you need, I am here to support you in that. And some schools have taken me up on that. If there is something that's changed in the district, 6 months later, we come back and we have a discussion about how you incorporate that. Or if there's a change with leadership in the school or something in the community or board leadership as well. So you've always got that opportunity. And then certainly we do a refresh after the plan has been completed, after the 3 to 5 year mark. So that's a quick overview of the process. And then as I wind down, benefits of MSBA, conducting your strategic plan. So certainly we have a lot of expertise about the school board's role. I bring to the position skills in facilitation, working with both small and large groups. I have done 60, maybe just over 60 of strategic plans since I joined the MSBA team. I've worked in school districts of all sizes and shapes around the state of Minnesota. And we also do strategic plans for charter schools, education districts, and education co-ops. So I've had a lot of experience. Also have our MSBA team to support me and to support you in the process as well. So if there are questions that come up where we need the assistance from our legal, Terry Morrow is available to assist. We have our communication staff on board, policy and management services. We have our technology staff. We have a individual who is a former business official. We have an individual who is a licensed superintendent. We have 2 board development staff. There are 4 of us on our staff who are former board members. So we really have a team that we pull together. As I'm working with you, I'm still going to be that lead person, lead contact for you, but I have access to all the other resources as well. One of the, a few of the other benefits is that I will record all the work. I'll provide all the reports. We believe that our fees are very reasonable. I've also developed a toolkit of resources, knowing that your superintendent has the day-to-day operations to oversee, and that's what you want your superintendent to be doing. So to help make your superintendent's life easier, I have a deep toolkit of sample letters of invitation, board postings, news releases, meeting links, things like that. So anything that is needed to make the process go smoothly from the district side of things, that is part of the toolkit. We also utilize social media too. So we push out social media on your behalf as we are conducting the process. And then, you know, we're certainly your go-to for everything school board. So another benefit of MSBA. And we are exclusively endorsed by the service co-ops here in the state of Minnesota. And with that, I think I'm going to pause. I believe that there might be questions from the board at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Gail. Yes, let's open it up for questions from the board.
Gail, I have one question. If you were to look back a year or two, let's say in 2020, in those districts that you worked with, how involved are you with them today?
The answer to that one is it depends. So certainly there is that 1-year follow-up with those school districts sooner if needed. But after that, I make myself available, and if and when the district needs my assistance, I am here to help. I've had it recently with some transitions with boards where they will contact me. And it really just varies. If the district is needing my assistance, I'm here. And if they're moving ahead and they're fine, then I think everything's a go on their end. Is that what you were looking for? Is that what help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks for asking it.
Director Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that you participate with 104 school districts in the state. How many of those have been rural districts versus, you know, metro, larger cities? What kind of percent do you have on that 104?
I'm not sure if I can give you exact percentages, but just ballpark. And maybe large schools versus small schools. So I would say, you know, like a Forest Lake, a Moorhead, a Winona would be examples of some Becker, Big Lake, some of the larger schools. Probably 1/3 larger schools, maybe about 1/3 middle-sized schools, and then the rest would be the smaller schools. So it really, really is a mix. At any given time, I could be working with a school district of 6,000 students, and I could be working with a school district of 400 students.
So would you consider 6,000 students a larger district?
6,000 would be large or more, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a
You're welcome.
question. My question is, does the cost of the contract involve 1 year of supporting us, or does it go for the 3 to 5 years where we're reviewing it?
Primarily, it's for that 1 year, that period of time that we're working together. But in essence, it really is for the 3 to 5 years. Where additional costs would be incurred is if we came back and did a refresh or a redo for you, which would be much more labor time intensive. And then we would look at what the fee would be. But basically, that would be the fee that is your fee and that we would provide services for through those 3 to 5 years. That was a good question. Nobody's asked me that one before. Thank you.
Do you, how do you integrate, if any, areas of meeting the diverse needs of our community And how would you tie that to where the state is? Or is that something that is driven by the state?
For us, I mean, it's not driven by the state per se, but that is an excellent question. So what we have done is looked at all of our materials through a diversity, equity, inclusion lens. And so there are a number of resources, especially the questions. First of all, I should say the questions that are asked in the surveys reflect DE&I. And then as we start moving into the process, we talk about equitable education. We do have a definition at MSBA, and then we will also reflect that in our strategic planning process. So actually it's spoken, discussed at each of the 3 meetings. So thank you for that question.
Well, hopefully you can hear me.
I
Question
can.
is, over the last, let's say, 3 years since the pandemic, has the framework, methodology, or some of the components of what you do when you're developing a strategic plan changed radically from what you did before that? And is that because of the pandemic or because of the amount, just advances in different things that have happened over the last 4 years that maybe, we need to be more modern, for lack of a better way to put it?
We've tried to adapt with what's happening in our world, in education, in society in general, and reflect that in the work that we do. Some of the things that we are incorporating or have in our process certainly are things that we've used maybe 5 years ago. Not necessarily, though, because I pretty much have gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb and have tried to revise it as needed. So again, we're really trying to meet the needs for your school community. And then also you want to move you or launch you into those next 3 to 5 years.
So said another way, but not to put words in your mouth, you guys have modernized your template with, on the fly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I think even more so when, with the onset of the pandemic, and that's when we really scrutinize things and how we are providing our service with strategic planning and how we are reaching out to each of the schools.
Okay, thanks, Gail.
Yeah, thank you.
One last quick question. Towards the end of your presentation, you referenced that you would be working with the social media portion. Could you explain a little bit more as to what that would look like or what your thoughts were on that?
Yes, so what I have done in the toolkit that I referenced before is to include social media examples that, first of all, your school district can use. So if you have someone who's doing that type of communication, you can share that to promote the process, to promote the work that you're doing. And then also for every meeting that I work with you, I push out some type of social media through MSBA's channels. And then, it's promoting you specifically that, this evening we were working on the foundational elements of the strategic plan at the Brainerd Public School. So we do push the information out that way. And that's a good promotion for you. It's also a good promotion for us too, that strategic planning is out there and it's working out throughout the state.
Gail, as far as the committee, when we get to the committee point and we're selecting different representatives of that committee, we have a lot of interest, I think, in our community about that committee, which is good. What size of a group would you be looking at or that's effective, or can we get too big?
So the committee size will be what's comfortable for you in your school community. So you don't have to worry about too small and you don't have to worry about too large. I would say the smallest committee size would be 25. Largest, I've had 50 and 55 in the committee. That might sound like a lot of people, but it actually works out really well. I think the key is that you as a board superintendent team are comfortable that all those voices and all the values come to the table. So making sure that you have a cross section of the students, the staff, administration, you as a board, that's a given, and then your community members. And throughout the process, we make sure that the committee understands that they are advisory to the board members, and that the final say on the process will be, the final adoption will come from the board.
Thanks. Director Ward?
Gail, I know that Director Hagelin talked about 10 or 20 years down the road after organizations that you've worked with. What about immediately following the, the plan, and there's problems that come up, or do you provide additional coaching or expertise or support immediately after the plan is done? Not 10 or 20 years, good question down there, but what do you do immediately after the contract's done? What does that look like?
So again, it's customized to whatever your needs are. We just don't walk away from you because we've got this ongoing relationship with you. For example, one community that I worked with in their strategic plan was actually going through statutory operating debt. And they had a real dilemma with facilities, ended up with a bit of a community uprise of sorts where community members weren't happy. So we brought the entire group back together and just did kind of a check-in and talk through what some of those challenges were. So it's a good question. I'm not sure that there's the perfect answer for it because it will really depend upon what the needs are in your school community. But no, we don't walk away from you, that's for sure. And it's interesting because in many ways, we end up becoming best friends because the returning and the calls that I get are from the board members I've worked with and from the superintendents that I work with as well. So it might be related to strategic planning, and it might be related to some other things as it relates to board development. But we don't walk away from you.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. Just to kind of piggyback on Director Nelson's question, do you provide guidance on how to select the cross-representation of community and staff and people that would be a part of this process?
I do. I give recommendations, and so the recommendation would sound something like this. I would suggest identifying 4 to 6 students, some middle school, some high school, and then how those students are selected can come internally, obviously, but a cross-section of students. Staff, I would suggest 4 to 6 staff, some licensed, some non-licensed, and again, those decisions can be made by administration or board can have feedback on that. Usually the superintendent identifies administrators to serve on the strategic planning committee. And then for the community members, I will usually suggest that board members submit names to the board chair, not necessarily having this discussion at one of your regular meetings, because if somebody mentions me and then I'm thinking, I'm going to get asked to be on the committee, and I don't, you don't want that kind of communication out there, negative communication, but having individual board members just submit names to the board chair, and then the board chair helps identify who those community members might be. But yes, I will give you some recommendations of numbers and who to select.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think you had a very thorough presentation, so thank you, Gail.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And as you know, the new board in January will be voting on this item. So.
Absolutely. And I, because of that, I'll just mention that I am going to do 2 presentations at Leadership Conference on Friday. If you are there, please join me. One will be kind of the nuts and bolts of the process and the that we use. And the other one is actually board members who have been part of the strategic planning process, and they are going to share their reflections and their reactions on the process and how they felt about it and how it has assisted them in their school district. So look for that if you're coming to Leadership
Our meeting is
Conference.
before then, correct, or the meeting? But so maybe could you send Superintendent Hahn the list of those board members, and maybe some of the board members that are making that decision might want to talk to them. That'd be great.
I absolutely will do that, and I will share names of some of the schools that I've worked with too. So you are welcome to call superintendents, board chairs. I think that's a very fair thing. That's a very good idea.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, Gail. Nice meeting you, and enjoy the snow
Thank
that's
you.
coming.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening. Take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, got everything ready for you? All right, I'll go with that, and I warmed up the seat for you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Denise Pontrelli, and I am the lead person for Partner Ed. Partner Education just changed its name, so if you went to our website, you'd see nothing until next week. The organization that we are part of formerly is School IQ, and if you go to theschooliq.com, you'll see our website and the people who I work with that represent this work. First of all, it's been a great meeting for me to be able to be here and see all of you, our new board members, people who have given so much of their lives to the board. It's just really touching to hear you listen about the work for Brainerd Schools that you've done and your hopes for the future, because you have beautiful buildings, and it's really a great time to focus on what's happening in the learning within the organization. So secondly, I would say I'm going to be much more brief than Gail, partly because many of the things, everything that Gail has said is part of our process as well. I really respect Gail and the Minnesota School Board Association. I will focus on things that we do a little bit differently than MSBA, but if you ask me, will you do this, will you do this, everything that she said is part of our process. Why part of that is one of my partners actually created the process for the Minnesota School Board Association. So, and you know, typically strategic planning is pretty similar in a lot of the components. So I'll move on here and make sure I hopefully touch the right button. So the three people you see in front of you will be the lead consultants for this. Myself, I was a superintendent. I've been on boards myself and just love the work. Part of why we call ourselves Partner Ed is we really, really believe in the partnership between the school board, the superintendent, and the community and the students. And so that is part of our name, and that is who we are. Paula O'Loughlin is a school board member, former school board member. She also formerly worked at the Minnesota School Board Association, and she works with professional development, not with just school districts, but also with Mayo Clinic and some healthcare organizations as well. And then Julie Kritz. Julie was former superintendent in Alexandria, Minnesota. So that's our lead team for this project. But just like MSBA, we also have people that are on board to help support the process. So when you look at your survey questions, we have research folks who are on board to make sure that the information that you're gathering is valid and reliable, and that it really can be used to make decisions moving forward. And you'll see a number if you want to go and look at the specifics to the schooliq.com website for the number of people, very similar to what Gail had said. I don't say retired because we're all still working, but superintendents, board members, finance directors, HR directors, all those kind of things. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our process. Much like Gail had shared, it's tailored to the needs of your individual school district. No one or two strategic plans are the same. We involve the stakeholders, and I'll share with you in a little bit about the internal and external ways that we do that. It's important to have the information from the team and everybody sitting behind these tables and in the audience. But really, your strategic plan is the focus of what your community wants. Your community supports the schools. Your community is part of recommendations about what that might look like. So I'll share with you some of the ways that we do that maybe is a little bit different than MSBA. We have in-person meetings. We think that's important. In the days of COVID, we all learned to do things through Zoom and other technology pieces, but we really feel that it's community building and bringing people together. And if you're bringing people together within the district, we feel like the lead team should be there together with you as well. And then we'll share with you some of the virtual tools that we use for input for the community at large. You all know how hard it is to get people to come to meetings. They have many opportunities for different things that are happening within their families and work, and it's just hard to get people to show up sometime, even when they want to. And so we have some tools that go out to the whole community, everyone in your community, so everybody has an opportunity to give you feedback in this plan. So our process, this is where I'll take most of the time today, talking about what's a little bit different from our process. At the bottom, you can see the Begin Here tab. The mission, vision, and shared values. I heard one of the community members say, well, we have those and they're good. And many times when we come to school districts to do this work, they say, you know what, we really don't need to do anything different. Our community spent a lot of time, it could be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years even ago, but they say those are really still our values. So we just like a little refresh of what that might look like, and maybe some new graphics or something to go with it. So we can go through a quick process to do that, or we can do a really in-depth process depending on what all of you decide. After that, we go and take a look at the current state of the district. And for all of these things you'll see on this graphic, there's an academic and an operational side. We all like to say that kids, and indeed they are, the most important things, but we also need places to put them. And as you had a conversation earlier tonight, you need the money to be able to do the programming that you need. It's not a great thing if you create this beautiful strategic plan and you have no money to support it. It doesn't work well. And so when you're looking at your finances and doing this work, we look at both of those in tandem as we move forward to understand your academic needs and the operational. The desired future for the students. College career life is what Gail had mentioned as far as the world's best workforce, and that is part of every strategic plan that we do. We also have an option to have the portrait of a graduate. Portrait of a graduate is looking at the child as a whole, and I have a few slides to share with you what that looks like if you choose to go that route. But that really focuses on what the future is. There are so many bright and shiny things in education that come up. It's really easy to be distracted unless you have a good plan or a good roadmap. And with that good plan and roadmap, as I said earlier, you have to have the finances to help support what that looks like for students. Then we look at determining priorities, and again, academic and operational. And when you look at those priorities, that's where you get the themes that Gail had mentioned earlier that come forward. And so it could be educational, you could be looking at finance, you could be looking at how you engage your community. The themes come up from the process of working with the community stakeholder group. And I should have mentioned that, just like Gail had said, the community stakeholder group can anywhere, her numbers are the same as what I would tell you. 25 is probably too small. If you get more than 65, 70, you probably have too many. If you have a space large enough, though, we can facilitate that for you, what it looks like. We also, similar to what she'd said, have a list of people that you should have involved as far as looking at your business owners and faith-based organizations and seniors. Many of you know that 80% of your community does not have kids in schools. And so we need to make sure that they're representative in this group because they're going to be helping you make decisions for the future. Then we go to the plan development, and that's really actually where the strategic plan kind of stops. The plan development is just what Gail had said. There are themes that come through and strategies and goals, and it's all aligned. It's aligned with your work and with your superintendent's work and with your principals and your teachers' work. And we look at, again, the academic and operational goals for that. The plan that she had said, the one-pager, I don't know if I get to one page. It's probably more like 2 to 3. But the concept is simple, right? If you have too much information, it just goes nowhere, and people have a hard time understanding what that is. The next two pieces you see here are pieces that PartnerEd offers, and it can be on an ongoing basis. Many people say, well, how do you know that this strategic plan is going to be not only efficient, but successful, and there's really going to be progress? Well, to be able to know that, you have to measure that. So what do we measure? So we can work with your school district to look at what's a dashboard look like for those goals, what are the things you should be measuring, what's the data that you're looking at going forward, to be able to track that over time. When we do that, then we work with the school district for that following year, making sure that the measures that we have in place are really the ones that should be in place. If not, we can help adjust those. And then we help report. One of the things that we think is important is too many people create a strategic plan, they bring the whole community, everybody together, they're all excited about it, and then after the first 6 months to a year, it sits on a shelf. We know how hard your superintendent and leadership team and teachers and students are going to be working on this plan. We really believe in celebrating and reporting to the public. So helping with those reports for academic and operational are part of what we do as well, and celebrate or not. If it's not going well, then we have to have a conversation about what in that plan is not going well and we need to redirect it. So that's the overall process, but we start with the mission and vision and shared values on the bottom. And again, that's with that community stakeholder team. But just like Gail had said, we have student groups. We pride ourselves in student voice and really listening to the students. If we aren't having learning experiences that resonate with them, then none of this is for naught, right? They really need to be engaged. So the student voice is something that's really important as well. Student input, there you go. Balanced demographics representative of your schools. We want to have early childhood. We want to have seniors. Middle school, we don't typically have elementary involved in this. Usually the concepts are a little bit hard for them. We do ask for students to be represented on the community stakeholder task force. We go a little bit more like 5 to 8 students. We find that students are so busy in the evenings with basketball or any of the other events that, you know, you don't get all of them there all the time. So we usually start with a little bit of bigger group of that. And then for the staff, we have after-school in-person focus groups. We have lots of options for staff to participate. We know that staff are busy after work as well. So we have large group presentations, small group presentations, and feedback following. We put out a survey to all the PK-12 staff. So if they aren't able to attend one of those, they can give us their input and feedback as well. And then, of course, we ask for the representation on the community task force as well. So there you go. You can see very similar to what Gail had shared. That community stakeholder task force is 45 to 60 members, balanced demographics from your community. We really stress having business and economic representation, city and county leaders, economic development, tourism. When you look at your community, the people who need to be at the table, we invite them. And we have, similar to what Gail said, invitations and things to help you in that, so you don't have to create all that yourself. We'll work with your communications folks here. I'll keep going. So Portrait of a Graduate. This is an optional piece, and it really used to be a very long, almost year-long process that was created by Battelle for Kids. And Battelle for Kids is the group that did the research behind it and Partnership for 21st Century Skills. But it really is getting from your community input through surveys and a large group gathering, coming together to think about those future characteristics and things that are important for students. And then you work together to identify those attributes for the Brainerd graduates. And I'll show you an example, because if you haven't seen this before, I think it's, oh, what happened to my... You don't get the example. There was an example in a different one that...
We did in the last one, we put everything side by side. Your examples were in there. So they had that in the previous meeting.
So it's not there.
Well, this is what was sent.
Okay, it's, well,
Yeah, I remember seeing
we
it.
can send you, we'll send you a graphic and for others in the audience who are interested in that. But really, the graphic is just that. It's a graphic, and it gives you an example that's created by your community and a big picture of what you want for your students when they graduate from Brainerd Public Schools. So it's a snapshot, makes it easy for people to understand what you're trying to achieve. So I'll finish this because I see some of you are tired yawning. Why Partner Ed? First of all, experienced leaders. We've been in your shoes. We've been board members, superintendents, finance, any of the things that are across the board part of education. We are in those shoes. We have a team approach. It's not just one or two people. It's a group of 3 coming here and then many behind the scenes for whatever a district may need. We use evidence-based practices when we're going out. It isn't just a bunch of good ideas. We really, when we look at the strategies, look at what are those things that are based on evidence that are said to impact student achievement. And the focus on student success is built around college, career, and life readiness. That's just part of your World's Best Workforce that I know you're all familiar with. And then finally, I think the thing that is really something that we stress is that power of partnership. It is the community, the board, the superintendent, and the whole school district coming together to decide what's best for kids. And that is a thread through everything we do. And in our graphics, those colors are threads which represent that we're woven together and we need to do this work together. So with that, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know you have a lot more left to do this evening, but I'd be happy to take questions.
Go ahead, Director Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I asked the MSBA this same question. How many districts have you, I heard 104 from them. How many have you worked with?
Not 104. We've only been around for 18 months. So as superintendents and districts, you know, we've done our own and we can send, I think we've sent you some of those examples, but ours is more in the 25 range. It's not the MSBA, history of MSBA. That's a lot, and you know, obviously a lot of expertise in that. But as I mentioned to you, our process was built by the person who made the process for MSBA, so very similar. Yeah.
So out of that 25, how many have been greater Minnesota and the others metro?
You know, probably actually most of our districts are the size of around Brainerd. We have larger districts like Eden Prairie and Edina that we've worked with, and we have smaller like Clinton, Graceville, Beardsley with about 175 students. So it's across the gamut. I'd say probably more small to medium than the large right now.
So there's 3 of you that'll work on this. Do you all come to all the meetings, or do you?
We come, all 3 of us in person.
You come in person?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. We think it's important if you're asking the community to come in and be in person, and we learn a lot from the conversations during that time. So that is your team, like I said, that will be here, and then others we pull in as needed. And most of that's for the background work. But for instance, with finance, if we are looking at and there's a concern about finance and we have to dig deeper into that, then we'll have some of our finance directors come with.
It looks like on the portrait of a graduate, which, by the way, good move, you put the graduate in Warrior Blue. I saw that one there. That, I see community survey in there. Is that the only place where you guys do community surveys? Is that level, or is that integrated into like the stakeholder task force or part of the pre-work that we do? Is there a broader community survey or survey involved?
Yes, there is.
Okay, I just must have missed that somewhere.
Nope, there are for staff and for the community at large.
Okay.
There's also another piece that you can have a conversation about that is, it focuses a little bit on innovation and getting more ideas from the community that enhances the portrait of graduate process. We know how hard it is to get people to be able to give you feedback on a survey, so we try to offer multiple ways for districts to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
So I know the MSB had a set price for their whole package or whatever that was presented last month at the board. And so I noticed that, in doing some research on that, I noticed that you have a menu. Mm-hmm. I found that very interesting. So of the 25 that you've worked with, how many have used the full meal deal, and how many have chosen like a breakfast sandwich?
Yeah. Probably a third, and a third. You know, some of the medium-sized districts and smaller do not always have the people power to do some of the research and evaluation and questions like that. But many like the portrait of a graduate piece. The reason we do that is because every district is different. So that foundational piece that you saw, that's our base price of what we think is important to have a good strategic plan. But some people have larger geographic areas or different groups that they'd like us to meet with. And so there's an option in there for that. So we kind of let you decide about what you want. You know what we feel you need to have as a base. And then the other piece that impacts our price some is we do come in person. And so if you tell me that we don't start till 6:30 at night and we're here till 9:30 or 10, then we don't hit the road at 10, we stay. And so that, might have a little bit of an impact on it, but that's part of us being in person and being part of your team.
Thank you. And the ones that took the, just the portrait of the graduate or whatever, their strategic plan worked for that district, even though they didn't do the whole menu? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, and the same thing, we're happy to send you recommendations, phone numbers, and contact information of superintendents and school boards that we've worked with.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be a while before I get to 120 or 140, but we're working on it.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And just reach out if there are any other questions. All right.
Yeah,
Good luck
thank
to
you
you
for
all.
your
Yeah,
presentation.
thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try not to hit that anymore. I apologize for hitting that so many times. So now we're into for action, the new business, and the first one, and I don't know if anyone's going to talk to this, the approval of election, is that you, Director Hahn, or is that Marcy? Is anyone going to talk about this? No one's on here. So this is just ongoing resolution we do every year in case we have a special election and we don't have all the polling places. So,
Chair Nelson, can I just, before we move on regarding our long range or strategic planning, is there any opportunity for the 3 board members that are going to make this decision on January that weren't given an opportunity to ask questions, to have not even been here, to talk to these 2 companies? And
Absolutely. So when all the information, so when we did the side-by-side comparisons, they've had
Yeah,
access
yeah.
to all of that. They've had all the exemplars, all the materials. At any point in time, they can call and reach out. And I know there's community members that are reaching out to oncoming board members. So they have the same access as everyone sitting here. So they can ask those questions so they can be well-informed in January. Plus, this is recorded, so for the individuals who aren't here this evening, they can watch the recording and follow up with further questions.
And then I had actually contact with incoming Director Heidman, and he gave me a list of things that if it was appropriate to bring up during the conversation, but it's really more about selecting a vendor than it is about this process. So I'll tell you that he in particular is very engaged. As best I can tell, he's reached out to me a bunch of times on this already too.
Good, okay, thank you, sorry.
okay, thank you. No, that was a good follow-up. Thank you. Okay, so back to the approval of the election resolution for combined polling places. Someone make a motion? Or just,
I'll move to approve.
thank you.
Second.
First from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Blacklands. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Oh, no, sorry, it's a roll call vote.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
Don Hagelin,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson.
Yes.
Don Ward,
Yes.
Charles Blacklands,
Yes.
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
all in favor.
Okay, thank you. Approved unanimously. Next item we have a bunch of policies coming up, and this first one, Angie Bennett will discuss 402 and 408.
All these policies are in honor of Director Hagelin's birthday.
They're what?
They're all in honor of your birthday.
It is
Awesome.
your present.
I've
It is
been-
your present.
I'm ready, I got
But
a lot of questions.
remember our conversation
I got a
earlier, no
lot of
questions.
My first 2 are really pretty quick. As part of the every 2-year review of policies, and we always look at the MSBA recommended changes, compare that to our current policies, as well as considering that the practices of the school district are still in alignment and if there's any adjustments that are needed. So with number 402, disability non-discrimination policy, excuse me, really the only change is towards the bottom under D, where we're adding some contact information. So there's an ADA coordinator, which is the HR director, giving that contact information, and then the 504 coordinator, who is the director of student support services and equity currently. We did not choose to put names in here just in case. And so we're using kind of a general email address that can be directed to us personally if anybody wants to reach out directly via email versus the phone numbers. Any questions about that one?
And this is a one and done, both of
Yep,
these?
because they're very minimal. We don't feel like there's necessarily a need for 2 readings, but if there are significant questions or a need to look back, we're definitely open to that, so.
I'll move to approve both policies as presented.
Oh, I haven't
Oh,
got
you
the
haven't done
other
the other one
policy
yet.
yet. No questions
I
on
moved to not do
402?
anything yet.
No, I'm gonna hold you to that motion here in just a minute. The second one is a subpoena of a school district employee. So again, we cross-referenced with MSBA, looked at our current procedures. We have had to use this policy in the past, and so there's a slight update just in the language and under the state law. It just kind of changed a little bit and added some additional verbiage about consent needed for any data to be released. Now go for it, Director Boyles.
Now.
Now,
I move to
you're good.
approve both policies as presented. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, I heard that little mumble there. That was a first from Director Boyles and a second from Director Brecken. I want to say Bachman, I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Brecken.
Michelle.
Sorry about that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Candace Burkhardt.
All right, similarly to Ms. Bennett, my policy has very, very minimal changes as well. This is Board Policy 615, Testing Accommodations, Modification, and Exemptions for IEPs, Section 504 Plans and LEP students. We did our 3-year review of this policy just to make sure there weren't any major changes with recommended policy from MSBA, and there really weren't. There was just one very minor change that we made to remove the dates of the MCA manual. Each year, that date changes. So just taking that out so that this board policy remains intact for that.
Okay, so this is a one reading too?
This is a one reading as well.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second?
First from Director Ward, a second from Director Hagelin. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Oh, go right ahead.
I was waiting. So this is actually a first reading, and this will not be approved until January. But what we've done is looking at Policy 213, School Board Committees. The changes that are looking at is identifying the committees and the subject expansion of those committees. So if you look, we had just one line. So finance, we've added that to finance and legislative. Most legislative decisions have a financial impact. We've also in policy have partnered who the director will be that will partner with that committee along with the superintendent. And so that's outlined in those policies. Like I said, this adoption will occur in January, and it'll take place before our organizational meeting, because at the organizational meeting, that is where board members will then be assigned to those committees. And as a reminder, all of our committee meetings will be public meetings. They'll be posted just like school board meetings. Minutes will be taken, and then they'll go through the formal process of reviewing and adopting those minutes as well. So this is just the first reading of that policy. Again, it's going to come before the full board again in January for approval prior to the organizational meeting, and then to have that discussion for committee assignments.
Thank you for bringing back these committees.
You're welcome.
I like how they've been revised.
I would echo that. Question, in their current form, right, we have in some of these cases where we have something like this, like the benefits one, for example, there's 2 of us that sit on that. That would be different than under this structure, or there would just be 1 board member on each committee?
Correct. So you're actually talking about sub-meetings that exist underneath the committees. So there's lots of meetings that you'll get to attend. That information from those meetings will come forward to this committee, with the committee bringing recommendations back to the board.
So, but each committee will have 3 members.
3 board members. There'll be a chair and 2 other.
Okay. I heard something different out from you, but yeah.
Well, you're looking,
Well, no,
so,
we didn't have them before. Right now, we don't have them. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
correct. And then board members attend, like, for example, our American Indian Parent Advisory. So that's not a standing committee in board policy. That's just another committee meeting you get to attend, as well as District Advisory Committee and Staff Development Committee and Benefits Committee and, yeah.
Betty, is the long-range planning and facilities, is that the strategic plan and facilities, or is that something different?
It's going to be a combination of both. So when you look at long-range planning, it'll be kind of that oversight of the strategic planning, but as we also know, specific to facilities. So when you think about capital planning and projects planning. So currently, right now, where we see that one going, for example, is you have a project oversight committee that's been in place as we've been going through Blueprint 181. That's wrapping up. So as you look, I'm looking at the 3 of you that are done after this board meeting. You've been those standing committee members. Our recommendation would be those members that are coming into the long-range planning and facilities, they'll step into that project oversight meeting at that time. But it'll be a combination of both.
So the strategic planning that the board will, that firm that they select in January, though, that'll be this number 5 on here?
No, that's a lot of the work that's going to be happening. These committees, what happens is all the meetings happening and planning underneath are going to come to the board committees to bring further action forward to the board.
Sure, but when it comes to driving the strategic plan, is it this, will it be that board leader on the long-range planning, or?
Potentially. I think, you know what, you've heard 2 different options from the people who presented. So when you really look at that committee makeup.
It might not fall in here, potentially.
Potentially.
Okay, gotcha.
And it sounded like all board members will be very involved in that.
Very involved in the strategic planning.
Okay.
So this is just a first reading, so you don't have to take any action. But just if there's questions or input, we'll be welcome to receive those so we can clarify and prepare for the January meeting.
I will make a motion to approve this this first reading, school board committees as presented. I too echo that it's great to get these back, so thank you.
I'll second.
First from Director Hagelin, second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up, we have Tim Murtha.
Couldn't send you off, Tom, without yet another policy.
You know what? The one thing I'm really going to miss is the opportunity to ask you some questions. So.
I'm going to miss the opportunity to give you answers. I love telling you what I think.
And I appreciate it.
What you have here is the first reading of Policy 425, the district staff development policy based on Minnesota School Board recommended policy. We're using the policy review process to untangle what is a jumbled Policy 619 that currently exists. Policy 619 is actually an MSBA policy that governs preparation for the graduation standards assessments, which no longer exist. That was the old summative MCA assessment you took in high school that was required for graduation back in the day when you still had a test to be required for graduation. So there's some structures here that are very archaic that need to be cleaned out. So what we're doing is pulling out the district staff development structures and procedures and returning them to the original MSBA policy, which is policy 425. At the same time, we're cleaning up some things in that policy. We're reducing 3 staff development committees in the district down to 2. And this will help align us with our continuous improvement work, which was a system that was not in place prior to the last time this policy was reviewed. So it sounds like a lot, but really we just starting over with 425. We'll come back at the end of this process and make a recommendation for what to do with the remaining elements of policy 619, or whether we will just retire policy 619. But the active policy really should be policy 425.
Any questions, or do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve policy 425 as Mr. Murtha presented with no questions.
Oh,
Second.
come on.
I'm glad we got you up here one last time, though.
One last time. I want to thank all of you for your service. It's been a privilege to work with you, and I welcome the new board members as well.
So we have a first from Director Hagel and a second from Director Blacklands. No further questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
2 more readings will be done.
Okay, and next we have Angie Bennett for the approval of first reading of MSBA Policy 404.
Okay, so this one, we did put up for 2 readings as there's more substantial changes, so there's time for everyone to reflect. There was some language additions on the MSBA model policy that included student volunteers, as well as some of the exceptions in regard to athletics. And then other substantial changes are really, we've changed from a paper faxing process to do our background studies to using a vendor. And so I made some shifting in the language to kind of recognize that. And it's worked out much, much better, by the way. But anyway, so that's the main changes. One thing that is later here, and I can answer any questions in the, excuse me, in the packet, is with this policy, there is an included background check form that was used as part of the consent process for the employee that was also then faxed to the BCA for processing. Since we're doing everything electronic at this point, the form really doesn't get used anymore, so I am also recommending that we discontinue that 404.4.
So has the employee or the person always been required to pay for their own?
Yes, since I've been here, and that's pretty common across districts.
Okay.
What is the price of
$20.
20, you said?
20, yep. And so with the electronic vendor, it is, they do still have to give consent. They have to do all the same things they used to do. It's all just done very electronically. They're sent a link, they fill out their own information, get submitted and processed, and then we get the results back and they get a copy of that. So it's pretty slick, which was one time used to be like a week or more, is now, you know, could be an hour, could be 24 hours. So we're able to really kind of onboard employees onto the district much quicker.
And is that updated annually then?
The background study?
Yeah.
Only if there's a separation in service. So we do have some
Okay.
policies that say that they need to disclose if they had a criminal offense. The school district does reserve the right to run another background study, and there's some parameters around the why and, you know, getting some consent for some purposes for that. But typically, we only rerun background studies if they're type 3 drivers. That is a mandate. But then if there's a separation in service for more than a year, then we will rehire that employee and have them go through the whole process again.
So barring any situations.
Right.
It's a one-time fee for somebody who wants to
Right.
actually volunteer in the building.
Well, volunteering is a different process.
Oh.
So this is really for direct employment where you'll be
Okay.
receive payment from the district. But volunteering, we do have a free screening process
Oh, it
for
is
that.
free
Yep.
for volunteering.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions about that?
I move to approve the first reading of revised MSBA Policy 404 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, first from Director Blacklands, a second from Director Brecken. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. And unless
You
there's
guys get to play
questions about the,
revolving chairs.
yeah, unless there's questions about the form, I won't come up to talk about it again.
Okay.
But it is a action item.
Okay.
At the end.
Policy 623, summer school instruction.
Hello, I'm back with my dear colleague, Ms. Hapajoki. So Ms. Hapajoki runs our credit recovery and summer school programming. So I really wanted to get her input as we reviewed this policy with the model MSBA policy. Really the big changes that we're recommending with this are to remove the reference to mandatory and really make this a broader policy that will look at our summer school instruction. So if we were, right now we don't have any mandatory summer school processes in place or programs that we require. If we were to have that, we would bring that to the board on an annual basis and make sure that that's approved by the board. And really this just talks about, for that summer school instruction, what are those things that we'll be looking at, like budget, staffing, registration, the calendar, procedures, and we would report that annually to the board.
I'll move to approve the policy 623 as presented.
Second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blacklands. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next up, we have some video recording policies, 711 and 712, with read these.
Okay, just quickly, two policies in front of you here. Policy 711 is video recording on school buses, and Fran is here, so I've reviewed this with Fran, and we have the base MSBA policy in front of you here. Really no changes to the base MSBA policy. What it does is it puts into place a procedure for us to follow and outlines how and when we release and share video on school buses and what we use that video for. We have been practicing that. We have policy 711A currently in place, which talks about our type 3 transportation vehicles. We would propose that 711 would replace 711A. Typically A is an amendment to a policy or an addition to a policy, so 711 would be that base policy. Also here in front of you, if you want to do them at the same time, 712 is video surveillance in schools. Obviously part of Blueprint 181, big primary focus was safety and security of our facilities. Through the Blueprint 181 project, we have added hundreds of security cameras across the district, and those cameras are used very regularly by staff, and Mr. Hendrickson and Mr. Anderson are shaking their heads over here. Forest View uses them on a daily basis to help with behavioral and oversight here at the facility. So two base MSBA policies in front of you that just outline how and when we use video and release that said video to law enforcement following Minnesota State statutes for Government Data Practices Act.
We also have Kevra from Reichert's Bus Service too, so if you have questions specific to our contractor, Reichert's or Fran, they're also here with us. Thanks, Kevra.
My question's on 712.
Yes.
I'm fine with the removal of the part about the bathrooms and locker rooms. Just if down the road we wanted to put a camera in an angle so we could see the entrances to those, does the current policy as amended now or with this deletion allow us to do that?
We do have them in hallways outside of locker rooms, restrooms, and everywhere. Public hallways, common areas, we have them out
So
there
we
now.
have the ability to monitor that at least.
We have the ability to see what groups would go in and out of locker rooms or bathrooms, if they're going in as groups or individuals or whatever it might be. We have that ability. That bullet that we removed has a lot of detail about, and it's has some detail, but it's very vague in how where you would put cameras, who would have oversight to those. We would need a lot of checks and balances in place before we would ever feel comfortable having something like that in policy. We need a lot more substance behind that.
Nope, agreed, thank you.
Yep.
Real quickly, in 7-Eleven,
yes,
you had referenced another type of school vehicle that you would place cameras in, other than buses?
Yep.
What was that?
So it's the Fran, maybe you want to speak to that, or Kevra, our Type 3 vans, so I believe it's our sped transportation vans?
We have a fair amount of Type 3 vehicles. They're regular vehicles that have a driver with a Class C driver's license and additional training. And we carry up some of our special needs kids on those buses, on those vehicles. The schools use them. And we also have some that we use as pool. Some coaches take kids to, if you're going to transport kids, you have to be trained as a Type 3 driver. And then we designate those vehicles as Type 3s. But they're mostly minivans, and we have a few cars, but mostly 8 to 10 passenger vehicles.
All right, thank you.
I'll move to approve the first reading of MSBA Policy 711 and 712 as presented.
I'll second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blackland. Any further discussion, questions?
So my question would be, is then this policy 711A, when do we, or how do we go about?
Get through the second.
Okay, through the second reading. Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure I have that for the next agenda.
Okay, no other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last thing that Director Bennett talked about was approve the removal of the 404.4 employment background check. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Director Ward, thank you.
I'll second.
We got that.
Michelle.
Director Brecken? Okay. First from Director Ward, a second from Director Brecken. Any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Those not approved? Okay, it's time for me to retire. Those against, the same sign? Okay, thank you. It is approved. And now we'll go on to informational. Director Boyles, the MSBA Delegate Assembly meeting, which I heard you had lots of fun at.
Yeah, I got to admit, when I was approached about being our delegate at this event, I was not super thrilled about spending a Friday night and a Saturday morning down in Minneapolis. But then I got down there and realized I'm a massive dork and really had a great time. So there were 105 delegates representing about 90 school districts from around the state. So that was the first value of that event, was getting to mingle with and talk to school board members from Wilmer and Fergus Falls and Perham and St. Cloud and all these other areas, and kind of hear some of the same stories about what they're struggling with that we are. And then the first night was an informational presentation by a keynote speaker. It was a guy from a firm called Morris Leatherman. They're a survey and research firm. That's where the dork part comes in. And what was really fascinating about his presentation was that he showed different surveys that his firm had done on very specific topics relative to how they impacted referendums and school board elections as it relates to community opinion and thoughts about things. And so one of the examples he gave was when they did a survey on basically the same topic, but asked the question in two very different ways, and how radically different the community perception of the issue was, depending upon how the question was asked. So in the particular case that I'm thinking of, when they asked about was there an adequate amount of coverage in the curriculum on racial and racial inclusiveness issues, the community, parents, and general community largely either said there's enough or there could be more. When they rephrased it as equity, diversity, and inclusion, the numbers flipped, and people were suddenly against it because they didn't like the words. So it was stuff like that that was kind of interesting to take away from that. And then a lot of it relative to why there were some, I think, 40 bond levies and operating levies, either increases or introductions of them, and they had about a 50% pass-fail rate around the state, and he went into detail on why that happened. Okay. So very fascinating as we look ahead to what we may have to do down the road. And then finally, the second day was where the delegates come forward as an assembly to vote on legislative priorities. There were 18 resolutions brought forward for us to vote on whether we want MSBA to lobby for those things with the new state legislature. 4 of the 18 did not pass. The one that Director Nelson put forward did pass. It was the only time I talked during the whole meeting, believe it or not. And basically the themes that came through really strongly were what school board members from all over the state were saying is local control. Stop giving us mandates, unfunded mandates, and the cross subsidy for special education is woefully underfunded. And those were the legislature. So the ones that failed were ones where they tried to get hyper specific and asked the legislature to focus on something was a very strong need for a lot of districts, but not every district. And the pushback was, give the district the money in the regular formula and let us figure out how to spend it locally. Which that's how I voted on all of them, just for the record. So it was fun. I had a great time.
Any questions for Director Boyles? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for representing us so well. Next up, Brainerd Public Schools Foundation.
So update from the foundation, they celebrated their 35th birthday. So that's how long our foundation's been in existence. So that's very exciting. And they did it in partnership with the American Legion last Monday night. I recognize some of our faces here. We all played bingo last Monday night, and there was a meat raffle. And I haven't heard the final dollar amount raised.
Over 5,000. That was just the start.
Okay, over 5,000, and this was their first time event, and really they just tried to do it as something fun to celebrate 35 years of doing great things for the school district. So that was very exciting, and they are in full force getting ready for the big event, which is always the first Saturday in February. Again, farm fresh, planting seeds of generosity. I think I'm looking at Jessica because she's also on the board. And so they're rounding up donations. They're getting that event set. Ticket sales are out. I know the tickets are they go fairly quickly. And bingo was sold out. So again, our foundation continues to do great things as they raise funds for scholarships for our students and then for innovation grants for our teachers in the classroom. So kudos to our Brainerd Public Schools Foundation.
Thank you.
That'll be one of I'm filling in. I'm the ex officio. So when the new board forms, somebody hopefully will volunteer to be the board member present for the foundation meetings.
That's a fun position.
It's a fun.
Yeah.
If you like bingo and you like having lots of energy and lots of work, that's a great group to be involved with.
Okay, great. Equity Task Force, Director Blacklands.
All right, thank you. Last month, we talked about experiences in research relating to behavior supportive services. And this coming meeting, we'll continue to discuss more about social emotional supports. And then also research and school experiences this month as well. And as we head into the new year, we'll also be looking at data, local data as well. Our next meeting is December 13th, which is tomorrow. And I think there's been an adjustment where we'll be meeting virtually tomorrow, just being mindful of the weather.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. Any questions for Director Blacklands? Okay. And it's Marcy Lord to talk about enrollment and finances.
I had to be fast, end on a good note, right? So the enrollment report is in your packet, and we are down 16 from the beginning of the year. When I compared the last 4 years, the average was actually 45. So that's awesome. We're trending, we're not losing as many kids as we have normally in trending. The budget revision will pull the October 1 account, and that'll be next month. And then I do also have more good news. November, Mars mission had free and reduced at 45.4%. Compared to our last year, we were at 31.6. I don't know if you guys remember, we were pushing that hard, like we need to get applications. And that's due a lot to some MA recipients receiving the free and reduced benefits. So we're not sure if it'll.
That's higher than it's ever been.
That's the highest since I've been here. But we're not sure if it'll carry through to next year. And I'm going to look at Alyssa because she has more background on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's great news.
I know.
I mean, it's great news for the school district. It may not be great news for our community.
It's a lot of needs. There's support that can be provided.
Right. And then the financial reports in your packet, nothing to note on the general fund. Both the food service and the community service fund are higher than prior year, but when you compare them to the pre-COVID years, they're right on track. And then the building construction fund we'll look at with the revision. We'll get an updated draw schedule from ICS. And then the OPEB trust fund, we'll look at projections because that one is tracking a little low compared to last year. And the audit presentation will be next month, along with the final June financial report. Since the audit is finalized, we'll be able to present that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Superintendent's report.
Well, first I have to give a huge thank you to everyone who's still sitting in their hard middle school choir chair. This has been a long board meeting, so congratulations to all of you. The good news is there's cookies to hopefully celebrate with us as we, again, say a sincere thank you to Director Nelson, Director Hagelin, and Director Blacklance. I again have to thank you. Your wisdom, your passion, your vision, your commitment. I don't think anybody has any idea about the amount of time that goes into this work and the work that's going to happen and continues to happen on behalf of the students of Brainerd Public Schools. You've been very supportive of me as I've transitioned in my new role, but as an employee of Brainerd Public Schools for 27 years, I felt that support from the board for a long time, and a lot of that is because of the longevity that sits here with us. So the good news is I know as you step away from the board, you just step right back into our buildings and the commitment to our schools too, with everything you do. So I sincerely thank you. And I do want to give a shout out about your special cookies because it's Alyssa's neighbor, just so you know.
Renee Miller made your cookies.
So
wonderful baker.
As a thank you.
They're beautiful. Tell her thank you.
So if some of you are admiring those cookies, you can connect with Alyssa too. So, but again, we'll sincerely thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay. Well, that's a wonderful way to end. Thank you. Future meetings are listed here. We're missing the BHS choir concert, which is a bummer. Next year at this time, I will be at that concert. And you guys have the organizational meeting on January 9th. And then the MSBA training conference, which is always a great place to get to know each other a little better. So, is there any other business to come before the board? I hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. First from Director Blacklance.
I'll second.
Okay. Second from Director Brecken. All in favor, say aye.